How do you marry someone? And later discover the man standing beside you at the altar may not even be the person he claimed to be. Late morning sunlight filled the small church in Miami, Florida, as guests turned their phones toward the aisle. Hannah Whitaker smiled, steady and certain, walking toward the man waiting at the front. Everyone watching believed they were witnessing the start of a quiet, ordinary marriage. But months later, investigators would return to that moment, frame by frame, because the man Hannah married that morning may have already been living under a name that wasn't his. Hannah Whitaker wasn't someone who rushed decisions. At 34, she had built a stable life organizing local charity events across Miami-Dade County. Friends described her as careful, thoughtful, the kind of person who double-checked every detail. So when she introduced Aaron Blake to her family, people paid attention. They had met the previous spring during a regional conference in Miami. Aaron said he worked in logistics consulting, traveling often, solving operational problems for companies across several states. He spoke calmly, never raised his voice, and somehow always seemed to know exactly what to say. Within months, Hannah believed she had found something rare. A man who listened. A man who showed up early to every dinner with her family. A man who remembered small things most people forget. But even in those early weeks, a few details quietly stood apart. Aaron rarely talked about where he grew up. When conversations drifted toward childhood stories or old friends, he answered politely, then redirected the topic. Most people didn't notice. One person did. Denise Whitaker, Hannah's sister. Denise couldn't explain it at first. It wasn't something Aaron said. It was something he avoided. During one family dinner, Thomas Whitaker casually asked where Aaron had gone to high school. Aaron paused only briefly before answering. But Denise would later remember that moment clearly. Not the answer, the hesitation. At the time, no one pressed further. The relationship moved quickly after that. Engagement followed by summer. Wedding plans set for early fall. Everything about the ceremony was simple and bright. An afternoon service, close friends, immediate family. No drama, no conflict, just a small gathering in a quiet part of Miami. But something happened after the wedding that slowly changed how that day would be remembered. It started with a routine document request. Nothing dramatic, just paperwork connected to a housing application Hannah and Aaron submitted together. A form that required identity verification. Normally it takes minutes, but this one came back flagged. At first, it looked like a simple clerical error, a mismatch in records, the kind of thing that happens occasionally when databases update. But when someone tried to verify Aaron Blake's background, one detail didn't line up. Then another, and suddenly, the question investigators would eventually ask became unavoidable. Initial record check, discrepancy detected. Because the identity tied to Aaron Blake's records appeared to exist, but parts of the history connected to it didn't. Schools listed with no enrollment records, employment dates that overlapped in different states, addresses that had never been registered to him. Individually, none of those details seemed alarming. Together, they raised a quiet, unsettling possibility. What if Hannah hadn't just married a man she barely knew? What if she had married someone whose real past didn't exist on paper at all? And the most disturbing part wasn't the missing records. It was the timeline, because the deeper someone looked into Aaron Blake's background, the less certain anyone became about who he had been before Hannah met him. But one detail didn't add up. 3 days after the record discrepancy surfaced, someone from Aaron's past finally appeared, a former neighbor, and what she said would force investigators to ask a far darker question. If Aaron Blake wasn't who he claimed to be, then who exactly had Hannah married? What happens when the person you trusted most has a past no one can trace, and someone from that past suddenly shows up? 3 days after the flagged records, a woman appeared at Hannah's door. Linda Carver, a former neighbor of Aaron Blake, carried a hesitant look, her hands clutching a folded envelope. She stared at Hannah for a long moment before speaking, her voice tight, almost trembling. "She isn't the first family he married," Linda said. Linda remembered Aaron clearly, but under a completely different name, Calvin Harper. She described small details no one else knew. The specific way he organized tools in his apartment, the books he always kept on his shelf, the particular phrase he used when joking. Hannah listened in disbelief, her chest tightening. How could the man she married, her calm, charming Aaron, have another identity, another life? Detective Raymond Booker was called immediately. He arrived within hours, reviewing the discrepancies in Aaron's identity alongside Linda's account. First witness, former neighbor. Every question Linda answered seemed to open more. Where had Calvin Harper gone for years? Why did no records exist under Aaron Blake before Hannah met him? And most importantly, who else could be out there, connected to this man's other life? Hannah's sense of safety crumbled in that instant. The man she had invited into her home, into her life, into her heart, might have been living a lie the whole time. But one question remains. If Aaron Blake wasn't really Aaron Blake, then who had Hannah really married? What do you do when proof of a stranger's life emerges, and it shatters everything you thought you knew? Detective Booker sat in the small Miami apartment, Aaron absent, documents spread across the table. Each file carried a date, a signature, an address, none of which matched Aaron Blake's story. The weight of the evidence pressed down on everyone in the room, because for every piece of paper, there was another lie hidden in plain sight. The first breakthrough came from employment records. Calvin Harper, Aaron's other identity, had been employed at a regional logistics company across the state, but the timeline overlapped with the supposed life Aaron Blake claimed to have lived in Miami. Detective Allison Park noticed a pattern. Dates, addresses, and tax filings didn't align. Each document told a different story, yet all carried Aaron's signature, or one he had forged. Employment records, timeline conflicts. Hannah's hands shook as she reviewed the files. The man she had trusted, married, and invited into her family had been living multiple lives at the same time. The most chilling part? Some of those lives included families who believed they knew him too. Detective Booker paused, glancing at Hannah. "This isn't just about a fake name," he said quietly. "It's about all the people who trusted him, and what he might have left behind." But one file raises the biggest question. Which identity was real? And more importantly, what had Hannah unknowingly stepped into? What if the man you married already had someone else's life? And that family is now reaching out. A knock at the door shattered the quiet of Hannah's apartment. Two strangers stood on the threshold, holding old photographs and letters, their faces lined with worry. Hannah froze, realizing this wasn't just about records or lies. This was real people who believed Aaron was their husband, their father, their family, because someone else loved him long before Hannah did. The couple, Laura and Mitchell Crane, explained that they had known Aaron Calvin Harper years before. They showed Hannah photographs of him with their children, snapshots taken on birthdays and school events. Every image conflicted with Aaron Blake's Miami life. Hannah's heart raced. Every memory of courtship and trust suddenly felt like a mirage. Every shared dinner, every whispered promise, now questioned. Detective Booker documented every detail. Even small gestures Aaron had made, smiling at family photos, recalling mundane events, now carried a sinister undertone. Other family emerges, conflicting life. The couple provided one critical piece of evidence. A signed legal document under the name Calvin Harper, filed just 3 months before Hannah's wedding. It was a stark reminder. Aaron had deliberately erased pieces of his past to step into a new life, Hannah's life. Hannah sat quietly, tears blurring her vision. The man she trusted, laughed with, loved, had been living another family's life, hidden in plain sight. One question remains. How many more truths were buried beneath the identity Aaron Blake had shown to Hannah? What if the person you trusted had quietly spent years building a secret life, and money reveals the truth? Detective Allison Park sifted through bank statements and invoices on her laptop. Aaron Blake's accounts showed routine deposits, but some came from locations Hannah had never visited, with businesses she had never heard of. Each line of currency hinted at a life carefully hidden, like pieces of a puzzle meant to confuse, because the money he spent traced a path that wasn't hers to walk. Aaron's financial records revealed two entirely separate existences. One account matched the life he lived with Hannah in Miami. Rent, groceries, dinners out. The other connected to properties and payments in a distant county, months before he arrived in Miami. Detectives noticed patterns. Cash withdrawals timed right before trips to meet unknown individuals, payments to private schools, and medical bills for someone else entirely. Dual accounts, hidden transactions. Hannah felt her stomach drop. The man she married had been actively sustaining another identity, maintaining obligations she had no knowledge of. Everything she thought was theirs together had been intertwined with a life that wasn't hers. And then came the note, tucked inside a bill she had never seen before, addressed to Calvin Harper with a date months before their engagement. Detective Booker leaned back, voice low but firm. These aren't just coincidences. He was preparing a life before Hannah even knew him. But one transaction stands out. Which payment would finally reveal the full scope of Aaron's deception? How far would someone go to hide an entire life while standing beside the person they claimed to love? Detective Booker and Allison Park knocked on a modest home in a quiet Miami suburb. Inside, a woman opened the door, her eyes widening when Aaron Blake's photo was shown. Her voice trembled as she spoke. He's been living here for months, under a different name, because the man Hannah married had been supporting another household, unknown to her the whole time. The woman, Monica Fields, explained that Aaron, Calvin Harper, had rented the home under her business account. He had paid the rent, utilities, and even helped with groceries, all while presenting a normal life to Hannah. Every casual story Aaron told Hannah about work trips or busy days now carried a hidden meaning. Hidden household evidence of deception. Detectives found correspondence, utility bills, and delivery receipts addressed to Calvin Harper. Each item confirmed he had created a full, functioning life in parallel to the one Hannah thought she shared. Hannah's mind raced. Every laugh, every intimate moment with Aaron now felt layered with lies. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was meticulous, calculated. Detective Booker said quietly, he wasn't just hiding a name, he was hiding a reality. But one question lingers. If Aaron could maintain an entire second life while married to Hannah, what else might he have been hiding? What happens when the truth finally catches up, and the man you trusted faces the consequences? Detective Booker watched as Aaron Blake, Calvin Harper, was escorted into the courtroom. The room was tense, every eye fixed on the man who had deceived two families. Hannah Whitaker sat quietly, her hands trembling, as the reality of justice finally arrived. Because the stranger she married would pay for his lies with a 20-year prison sentence. Evidence collected over months revealed multiple identities, hidden households, forged documents, and calculated deception. The court weighed the emotional trauma inflicted on Hannah and the other family, along with the deliberate manipulation of two lives. The verdict was clear. Aaron Blake would serve 20 years in prison. Justice served 20-year prison sentence. Hannah exhaled slowly, relief mixing with sorrow. She had survived a betrayal so profound it had shaken her entire world. The sentence brought a sense of closure. The man who had shattered her life could no longer harm anyone else. Detective Booker looked at Hannah and said softly, "This is the end of his story, but the start of yours. Subscribe to the Veil of Secret for more shocking true crime stories." Hannah stepped out into the Miami sunlight, a sense of justice finally settling over her. The stranger she married was gone. The truth had been uncovered, and the world now knew deception carries a heavy price.